Hello, today's Monday, August 8th, 2022. I want to do a call to order for the Barrio Historico Historic Zone Advisory Board. Get this. So Paolo, I'm here. Who else was here? Grace?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, and then got it. Jody, who else was here from the board? Oh, Paul.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, approval of the minutes from February 14th and July 25th, 2022. Are we really doing minutes from February, Jody?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was going back through and it was one where we did a site visit and I had forgotten to include when we had gone out.
Which site visit was it?
We've only done one where we were all out there at that property that had demoed the back of the
18th.
Yeah. So sorry.
Okay. Does anybody have the courage to approve those minutes?
Sure, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second, Grace? Were you even on the board then?
That's what I was just checking to make sure that I could second that. Yes, so I would second that as well for the motion.
Okay, great. So the minutes from February 14th are approved. Last month's meeting, I can make a motion to approve those. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that one.
Great. So both the meeting minutes from February 14th and July 25th were approved. Now we can move on to call to audience. Jody, do we have anybody?
We
Any
did not.
questions?
We did not receive any call to the audience.
Okay. Great. So we can move on to the reviews. Review A, 400 West Simpson, improvements to the parcel and construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit, ADU. It's a courtesy review. And who is presenting that?
I'll be presenting that. Jesus Robles with Dust.
It's all yours.
And
Jesus.
thank you. And Artina's joining me as well. Let me share the screen here. All right. Can everyone see and hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I want to start off saying this is our third courtesy review. We appreciate your guys' patience with us.
You're welcome.
I think on our last review, there were some things that we needed to get in order that were clear we needed to get in order on our end. So I'm going to just jump straight into those. The proposal is a ADU new build in the backyard where the Elysian Grove Market is. I'm going to start with the development zone. That's the thing we missed out on last time. A lot of our references and our thinking were sort of reaching outside and beyond that. So here we're focusing straight on the development zone. Jody helped us define that from last time, which just added the Carrillo Elementary School. I think for the purposes as we move through, we've removed Carrillo. We won't be referring to it as it's a different use in construction. Zooming into that development zone without Carrillo, some images of the contributing properties, ours highlighted as number 1, and the non-contributing properties in the neighborhood. From looking at that, we went into a step to kind of look at the part of what our discussion was last time was about a wall around the property. And so in doing that, we've taken stock in our development zone with how the properties are enclosed. And for the most part, we have a range. A lot of them are metal corrugated, maybe wood construction, all about 6 feet tall. Samaniego has a specific case in which a lot of the front yard fences are lower. A lot of them are see-through. So in looking at this further, kind of taking stock, we haven't really changed the siding. We wanted to respond mainly to Samaniego in this condition. And so we're looking at the street front here that is existing. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the fences are low. Most of Samaniego are front yard fences, with the exception of EGM has a side yard. And I believe the property to the south here is also a side yard. And so in looking at that context and locating and siding the ADU, the 900 square feet is highlighted here in red. And we have a small little portion that comes out to the 0 lot line. This we felt were responding to the rest of Samaniego, pushing up to the 0 lot line and creating an entry for the ADU. This in turn would create just a 6-foot fence. Before we were looking to see masonry or plaster. And I think we're gonna probably just stick with the corrugated, remaining at 6 feet tall, except for where the structure comes out to the lot line. Just to zoom in, 1 to 200 scale. So in citing it, zooming into the site plan, we waited to get this courtesy review because we're waiting on a survey. In that survey, we found that, as we kind of were assuming, but we weren't sure, the existing building and the fence line is built outside of what's the surveyed property line. In response to that, I don't know if you can see my mouse. The red dashed line is the survey boundary. You can see the Elysian Grove Market existing outside of that and partly running through the doorway. And the existing fence is this dashed gray line on the outside. And existing out here, what's colored peach. And so our proposal is to, for part of this, pull back and give the neighbors some of their yard back. On the Samaniego front, step back that, I think it's like 2 to 3 feet for a portion of it. But the remaining of it, we'd like to put the fence back where it was, just so we get an entryway in here and we don't have any conflicts with that door. So in essence, kind of, if everyone walks down Samaniego now, we have the boundary of the fence that exists that is actually 2 to 3 feet east of their property line. Just moving through some of the zoning stuff on this. 900 ADUs in orange. The peach is the existing fence area that quote unquote would give back to city and neighbor. We have a vehicle use area, an entry courtyard, and a storage structure. I apologize, those colors are swapped. Total lot coverage with those items were probably about 55.4%. Of a 70% allowable lot coverage. The site plan is also noting a little development in our design. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 are shade structures. We presented a portion of that at the last courtesy review, and we have a little more development, but we're still waiting on structural. But we're looking to span between the market to the ADU, from the ADU over the pool, and from the ADU over the parking. A little more detailed view. I don't know if I can zoom in here.
Just to interrupt, I want to let you know that Philippe arrived at 4:09 p.m.
Okay.
Let's just go ahead and keep.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to zoom. I'm just gonna get out of full screen. So here's just a little more detailed area. I just want to note out the old fence line in this dash line that's existing around, and us sort of tucking back to the EGM property. It actually ends up providing a nice buffer between us and the existing neighbor to the south. And then I'll zoom in over to this area there. The property line is in the dash dot here. it cuts through the existing doorway, and so we're proposing the fence remain as in its location, and we terminate it in about 17 feet. We have some grade to manage here coming from the street level, so there'll be some retaining and some steps to access that backyard gate. Two areas on the ADU that we're looking, so the ADU habitable space is here, and we're extending the wall and the parapet out to meet the street front at Samaniego, and this is to serve as an entry for the ADU on the Samaniego side. As you come into the parking area here and you move on this grade, our finished floor of the ADU is, we're landing at about 2359. And when I get to the sections elevations, I'll point these out more. But this patio here, we're looking to get a variance for an 8-foot wall that's connected to this storage structure. And that's to create a little private courtyard here for the tenant of the ADU. The section is going to show a little more clear. Cutting through what that courtyard would be at 8 foot. This outside line that's dashed is the existing fence line at the street. So the EGM property, the Legion Grove property, actually drops down a little more than 3 feet from Samaniego street level. And so we're trying to mitigate the grade. We'll probably have quite a bit of fill we need to bring in. But our goal was hopefully with this back wall on the property line not to exceed the height of the front wall. One other thing to point out in this elevation, I believe the ADU code is calling it a max 12-foot high. Because of that grade elevation, and when we're landing finished floor, I believe our parapet is pushing 13 feet from approximate natural grade. This dash line here showing existing grade and our new proposed fill in that area. I mentioned the, let me see the other section. Here we go. Jump to this one. This is the ADU south elevation. Here's Samaniego to the right. And you can start to see that gate entry and this top of wall. That top of wall at Samaniego, we're drawing it at about, I believe it's 11 feet tall on that edge. For reference, the Elysian Grove market is about 14 plus. And I could go back to the street elevations where you can see the neighbors' peaks are at about 13 to 14 feet tall. So as you move down from Samaniego Street, you can get a little better picture of this is that courtyard here. North elevation of the ADU. We looked at this two ways. Prior, we had large openings on all elevations. For the north side that faces the Elysian Grove market, we've minimized the openings, went to more historic proportions, sort of played with their arrangement in the elevation. And we have a solid door to enter an ADU. We thought this was good, provided some privacy. As you noticed on the south elevation, we're enlarging that opening for a little better access of lifestyle, daylight to the south courtyard that we're proposing. So we're got that drawn at about 10'6" at the Samaniego Street grade. Last review, we had proposed what we were thinking with the shade structures. At the last review, these shade structures were 12 foot tall. We've modified that to bring it down to 9'5" from the interior finished grade. This one at the pool will end up near the property line, looking at about 10 feet tall from the alley. Those we're looking, I think it says here, construction of that is a 2x2 steel posts. I have to go back to the plan for the spacing, but there's about 3 posts to be able to pull some tensile shade structures or just sailcloth shade structures. A little more focused view just on the ADU elevations out of their context. We're proposing the ADU walls to be a smooth white lime plaster finish. I think the Elysian Grove market now is sort of it's textured, definitely stucco and painted brown. My apologies here, we are missing the elevation at Samaniego, but I can refer back to our site diagrams if we need that. And then the last section is just reference. As we get into this, we can refer back to what the existing conditions are and some of the existing drawings and heights. I think today, kind of what we're looking at, this being our third courtesy review, we're hoping to submit for final in our next submittal. And what we wanted to discuss with you guys were the siding, the variances of the wall heights, locations of walls at the property lines, adjustment to the property lines, and the openings of the ADU. And then anything else you all want to comment on.
Hey, Susan, can you repeat really briefly what it is you're asking for today?
I know you can't give us an approval at courtesy
Right.
review, but I know I felt at our last courtesy review we missed the mark. We didn't do anything well. We didn't get any clear feedback or sort of insight that the direction we were going was solid, and so we regrouped. And today we're just kind of looking that, you know, when we submit for final, we're not looking for any surprises.
Right.
Would the wall heights be acceptable? Would the location of the proposed walls at the site property line be acceptable? What is
Moving
your
the
thoughts
property
about-
line?
Yeah, moving the
Yeah.
property line, and also our sort of zero lot line conditions with the south courtyard and the Samaniego street front.
Right.
As well as your thoughts on the openings in which we're thinking about the north to south facade. Our earlier conversations were around, we're clear that there are no large openings in the barrio historically. And so we're actually trying to find ways that we can mitigate that, but also still get access to some of the more modern design in this neighborhood.
So is the max wall height of an ADU, did you say it's 12 feet?
This is what I've read on the city ADU parameters that they just passed.
Right, so that, I know they normally measure that from lowest adjacent grade, so you're theoretically above that by 1 foot, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Are they not measuring that from the street?
I think it's the lowest adjacent grade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looks like on Samaniego it's working because you're at what, 10.6?
They're lower, they're well below. Yeah. And that's, I think, what's historically relevant, no? In a way.
I think we're not, I might speak, I'll just speak plainly. I think you guys would be able to provide a variance if you saw fit to that 12-foot.
Jody, can we provide a height variance? Just as we can provide a setback variance?
You can provide a setback variance. You haven't really done height,
Yeah.
but it is also about fitting into the HPZ. So if you
Right.
felt it was appropriate, you can make that recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Paul, I think I interrupted you. Can you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would like to express get into a few details on this. For one thing, the shade structures on three sides of the ADU. I mean, there's nothing like that in the barrio. I think it's just it's an alien detail. And also I would question the masonry wall on the south side of the ADU. I mean, I would think that just the fence that you're proposing should be more consistent with what's going on in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Paul. I'll address those in reverse. The wall, we're only proposing for a portion.
Right.
And I think what I was trying to highlight were, so for most of this here, as we're looking at Samaniego, that'll be corrugated coming up to a new masonry wall that's pushing this new property line. If I zoom, oh, here, I have it here.
Well, I'm talking about the wall on the south side, not the wall in front.
Correct. I'm getting to that. And so we have an accessory structure here that is a storage unit. It's going to be masonry on three sides with some steel doors, and that's going to be in front of the car to park. Now, that's right on the property line as well, just where the car is. And so we'd like to continue that 8-foot height in masonry around to form a courtyard around the ADU. The rest of the fences adjacent and butting up to it will be 6 feet from grade, which in this case will actually be lower than what it is at Samaniego. And so I know I'm speaking and a drawing would be really good here. In essence, you wouldn't see that wall from this view because our height is at 8 feet, which equals a 6 foot at the street. The corrugated fence will need to drop 2 feet, carry next to the car, and then our masonry wall of the storage unit and the courtyard will hold this space. And so we know it's out of the ordinary, and though, so that's why I wanted to loft that as a proposal for a variance there.
Yeah, I would still object to the masonry part of the wall, not that you have a structure there.
So we have masonry across the way that's defining the property pretty strong. I forgot the address of this one, sorry. And you are correct, there's not a tall masonry wall anywhere else, but we're feeling that we're so secure and secluded from the street view. The new property line is giving the neighbor quite a bit of yard back. And for privacy purposes, this wall is advantageous for both.
Well, I still think it's inconsistent with the neighborhood.
I don't know how to respond to that. Sorry. What do we do about the masonry wall that is on El Paso and Simpson as a reference?
Yeah, actually, that masonry wall is was not built during the historical period. That was something that the present owners of the corner property built there. So that's not a historical.
I understand. I also am taking as a deep look that most of the fences in this neighborhood were also not historic. So I'm referring to modern construction, if you allow me a wood or corrugated fence, but that our neighbor in our development zone has a front yard 6 foot tall masonry wall and a side yard 6 foot tall masonry wall. At some point approved, designed, found suitable to fit in the context of the development zone. I'm a little confused on that part.
Well, there were some periods of time when there was not an active advisory board in this area, and there were a number of clearly inappropriate things that were built. So I think in order to maintain as closely as we can the integrity of the neighborhood, we need to look at historic elements in the neighborhood in order to determine what what we approve for construction at this point in time.
So.
Anybody else have comments on that?
I didn't fully, sorry, I missed the first part. What's going to happen in that gap just south of that wall?
Oh, sorry, Philip. Hi, Philip.
Yeah, hi.
This wedge here
Uh-huh.
that you see,
Yeah.
the fence is built on the neighbor's property. And our
So the
survey,
new property, you are building along the new property line.
correct.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, we're allowing houses to touch the property line, let's say on the street, right? Because there's precedent for that. And I think there could be made a point that why couldn't walls be built to the property, solid walls built to the property line. And there's that variation of fence and solid wall that, is consistent with other houses. And just definitely with the Elysian Grove. And with the nature of it being set back, yeah, I don't fully follow the reservations here. I think courtyard walls are fairly consistent with a lot of the architecture. I mean, yeah. But I agree that they are, that they were becoming more an integrated part of a history, of the long period of time. But there's very successful examples of it just to the east, where EXO is now. That's a great courtyard wall. Doesn't affect the historic structure. And I think I see this in this category, to be honest. So yeah, that's, but it's an opinion at this point, right, Jesus?
Yes.
I have another question on the entry courtyard.
Yes.
That is now at the height of the building, right? The parapet is matching.
Yes, let me go to, it's not matching existing, but it's matching our proposed.
Yeah, got it. Okay. I just saw that one elevation, but I think it's the door in the back. Yeah, here. Okay.
Yeah, because we're coming in at Samaniego.
Got it.
2.5 feet higher.
Okay. Good.
And then, Paul, per your other, I didn't forget, the shade structures, I also don't know how to respond to that. It's Tucson. I think the way that the owners are envisioning the lifestyle here, let me go to a site plan. The prior proposal that didn't get built from Bob Vint was a shade that's coming out all of these southern exits of the Elysian Grove. In our case, because we're landing a habitable dwelling unit in the middle of the yard, there's some relationships and adjacencies and lifestyle things that we're trying to consider. So we're not, by any means, our intention is not to be sort of overbearing, but actually just provide comfortable outdoor spaces to inhabit between both structures.
Well,
Go ahead, Philip. Okay, my objection is that you are introducing visible, architectural elements that are alien to the historic zone. I think in another area they would be perfectly acceptable, but I think that in this case these shade structures would be pretty conspicuously visible, and they do affect the appearance of the neighborhood. There's certainly is no historical or precedent for for them.
Yeah. I see I mean, do you have in this development zone, or if you don't find in development zone, you are also allowed to look a bit further? And there must be historic pictures of ramadas around buildings, of porches, like add-on structures to these massive walls. And we've seen those. So Paul, I see it more in that category. It's like an add-on porch, or it's an add-on ramada structure. And there's, if they were able to show precedent for that, it's just, you know, nowadays we don't do, you know, they're not doing the saguaro ribs anymore, or the, you know, for good reasons, and they're doing a fabric structure. And are these retractable also? Way they're looking?
Yet two will be retractable. The ones between the existing and the ADU and the pool retract, and the car will remain static.
Yeah.
This is, Philip, I'm glad you brought it up. This is our modern interpretation of the saguaro rib ramada. Otherwise, the context we're going to find is corrugated metal or Spanish tile, hard shade roofs. And so our intention was really to land something more delicate, more filigree, more temporal in feeling and visual.
Well, I would be, you know, less likely to object if you were to put something that was more in line with a traditional ramada. I mean, it could be covered with sheet metal or some other type of covering, but you know, I think that the type of shade structure that is proposed here is simply alien to the historic district.
You know, I completely agree with Paul on that. I think if I remember correctly, what Bob got approved, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, I think he did have a corrugated roof over that portion, didn't he? He did not have shade sails.
He had solar panels
on top of the corrugated roof.
Yeah, he did have solar.
I mean, if anything,
there was no roofing underneath that. It was just solar panels.
I believe it was just solar
It
panels.
was a beefy wood structure, more like Santa Fe style, and then there was solar panels on it.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's
well,
yeah. I mean, I just agree with Paul. It's, you know, I haven't seen this type of shade structure in the barrio, and in trying to interpret this with a modern, you know, saguaro rib ramada, just, I don't think it's gonna cut it.
Can we, well, only in tectonic feel and structure, just something pushing light, like not a one-to-one.
It's definitely, don't talk it small. It's an inspiration, and the interiors, you know, standards they ask for. They acknowledge that we are living in a different time, right? It just has to be fitting in. It has to be in some way compatible, but doesn't have to be matching in a way of copying. So yes, that leaves space for interpretation, but to have a solid mass structure and the lightest weight roof possible in a way around it, that enforces the historic topic of solid structures and lightweight structures around them, right? I mean, I can follow that argumentation. Yeah.
If we will do some more homework, we'll take a look. I don't want to offend, but I feel like on this one, I know I've seen them in larger Barrio Historico, but obviously not in our development zone. And so I'm probably going to
bring us that next time, Jesus.
Okay.
But I think overall, I think the project looks good. I mean, the
Jesus, I want to comment to the, just to get back to that discussion, because we weren't finished with that discussion on the roof structures. I mean, the other would be, it looks very light, and that's maybe the alien thing. Would there be a way to flank it? There are structural reason to flank it with some beams or something, you know? And then
let's let them study that and bring it next time.
Yeah.
We can develop it further, definitely.
But overall, I think it's a good project. That's really the only thing that stands out to me. The courtyard in the back, I don't see that as a problem at all. It's farther in the back, it's being used as a courtyard instead of a backyard, and it deserves to have some massing around it. Mary Lou, Grace, any comments?
No, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I agree that it looks well considered. I think that I'm more on Philip's side regarding the shade structure. I appreciate the lightness, particularly sort of reinforcing the primary residence and not taking away from that. But
My only last question is about removing the fence and then allowing it to be put back over the property line. Jody, is that something that we're allowed to do, to go over the right of way?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again, Paolo?
Well, they've got the fence on the east end that's over the property line. It's probably grandfathered in. Nobody's going to make them pull it down. But if they do pull it down, are you planning on pulling that section down, Jesus, to modify it, or?
We were to look to redo we got to regrade the whole backyard. So we're looking to put a new retaining wall and put the fence back where it is at that 17'6" mark.
I almost see an issue with that, Jody. I mean, I don't know if I'm wrong about it, but they're building over the property line. I think the city is going to appreciate that. I understand if it's there and it's existing, but once you demolish it and put it back, there might be some reservations to that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would think once you're pulling it down, when it's there, it's there. And it could come along later if they need it, they will make you take it down. But once they see where your property lines are there and you're tearing that down, they're likely not going to allow you to build it back in place.
So just keep that in consideration.
Will do. If I didn't have this doorway there, it would not be something I would wish to consider.
Did you talk?
Right, but you could leave it there, can't you?
We could leave that section of fence there. If we do, are we able to change out its material? Those are questions I would have moving forward.
Might be a question for an attorney.
Well, I personally don't have any objection to that that wall and the doorway. I think it's actually a fairly good way to adjust to the discrepancy of the building wall and the property line as it was surveyed. I mean, obviously you shouldn't be forced to build the walls going into the doorway. So, I think that's a reasonable compromise to deal with a situation that you have no control over. I think visually it would be better just to have a short section of the wall continue along the wall of the west side of the building. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, those are things we're definitely considering about minimizing the length of that section. I think is where it made sense to get back to our property line. Jody, is that something for Barrio to go on, or is it?
Oh, it's zoning. You have to go to zoning. Jesus.
Okay.
Have you talked to zoning ever about this project, considering all the changes in the property line and all that?
No, just in talking with them about the ADU and the percentages, but not.
Okay.
We just got the survey a couple weeks ago, so we haven't yet.
I would talk to them before you come back, to have a solid answer.
Okay.
Hey, Sus, you also said you wanted to talk about openings. Do you want to go over any specific ones?
More so based on we had a comment last time it was just more general that there are no large openings usually considered in historic Barrio. And we do have, I'm not going to try to hide it here. We are proposing one on the south, a large fixed panel and a French door that opens out into that private courtyard. That's the only one. The rest of them, if I go to the elevation sheet, be easier to see. The rest of them we're trying to keep to the context and be minimal. But it actually kind of serves our use and function of the ADU and privacy.
Well, I certainly would rather see a number of rectangular windows in place of that one large window next to the doors.
Is that, Paul, a bunch of divided lights in that?
Oh, something like that.
It's just, doesn't the existing structure have a big window?
Exactly.
It does, but not in this size, close to proportion. But we were also advised to not refer to our existing structure because it was commercial.
Right.
My question then for you guys is, and here's a stretch, Paulo, so you can laugh at me on this one. How are you guys sort of negotiating the large opening of the garages proposed in the context? Like when someone needs a garage, how is that opening size in the facade?
Probably a normal garage door opening.
But
I mean,
not
I
being,
don't have a problem with that window and the proportions you have there. I mean, there's plenty of houses, especially newer ones in the barrio, that have been approved with much bigger openings. Not on the street facade, but in the back and in courtyards. And
okay.
You know, I think if that was out on the street, it probably would not be approved, but I don't see a problem with it on the south elevation. Anything else? Anybody? Any last comments? And
Okay. Well, that was helpful. I thank you guys for your time on this one.
so the next one will be a formal.
We're going to shoot for it. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Anybody else? Nothing? All right, Jesus, thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you all. Take care.
Okay. Jody, are these all courtesy reviews?
They are all courtesy reviews.
Okay, so letter B, Teatro Carmen patio project. Development of a new exterior patio, infrastructure, landscaping, and wall along property line. Corky, are you presenting this?
Yeah, but I think Sarah and Herb are going to start.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Sarah Fontaine, I'm project manager at Pima County and supporting this project. And we're working closely with Herb Stratford and Corky and Drew at PMM to get this project done. It's going to be a wonderful improvement for the area.
And I'm Herb Stratford from Stratford Artworks, and we're sort of the development partner for this project. And so this is going to be basically done in two phases, the overall project. The first project is the facade and the patio, and then the interior of the theater space will be done in a second phase once we've completed the fundraising. But we have received grants and dollars for this project that we're talking to you about today. So I'll turn it over to Corky to walk it through.
Thank you, Drew. Can you bring up the slides? We'll just walk it through, and we'll do both the projects in one single presentation, both the patio and the facade, and then we'll have a discussion about it. Drew, can you just do one slide at a time? No notes? While Drew's doing that, let me just also explain why this is a courtesy review. Pima County owns the property, and so this permit will be a permit that runs through Pima County Development Services. And so technically we're outside of the zoning of the HPZ. Having said that, we made a presentation to the Historic Commission in March. We promised the Historic Commission that we would bring more detailed presentation to the individual sub-projects, both to the Barrio Historico group and then ultimately to PRS. That's okay, Drew. We can proceed this way. There we go. Thank you. Anyway, so we're here really to get your opinions, get your thoughts. We're moving forward with the project and have sort of a lot of detail. Most of you know a fair amount about the location and the project that's sat vacant now for several decades. And both Herb Stratford and Pima County are anxious to activate the corner, activate the properties, and move forward. We've been moving in fits and starts, putting together grant applications and funding, and we have funding now for the two projects that you're going to see after this presentation. We'll take this same presentation to PRS and get thoughts there. So next slide, please. I'm going to let Drew talk us through the beginning of this.
All right, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, so the property has been owned by the Rawlings for the past 20 years maybe, and it's been used as sort of a storage facility for their materials. And as you can see, most of our photos that we have existing right now was when it was occupied by the Rawlings. But here's a few photos inside. As you can see, the original ceiling is still intact with the tin. That is myself and Jim Galvin up in the roof. We still have the original proscenium here, and you can see that. We kind of put together a storyboard here, or a timeline, to kind of tell the story and figure out what the building was and how it became. It was originally started by Carmen Soto Velasquez, and it was built in between two existing buildings. So it shares common walls on both sides of its, I guess, north-south along Meyer, but neither of the buildings exist. And we've used sandboard maps and aerial photos that we can conjure up to sort of begin to tell the story of the Teatro. Down here, you can see this is the only existing historical photo we have. We now have the high resolution of the Teatro. We're estimating it's 1915, 1916. And we kind of walk along here because originally the Teatro only acted as a theater for what we guess 6 years. And then it sort of had a mix-up time period where it was a garage and maybe an exercise center. We're not really sure. But then somewhere around 1930s, 40s, the Black Elks took over the building and then added on a secondary building. So you can see in our series of the timeline, this is 1924, if you see where my mouse is. We still have the fly loft existing on the building that was right on the back of the edge of the property. 1947, the fly loft is gone, but we have some kind of little exterior building. At that time, the secondary building, which we're calling the Elks Lodge, was non-existent. 1949 here, you can see the Elks building was created and completed. We still had the building at the corner. This is below here is the only existing photo that we have of what was a market, and it's an odd oblique from the south, I guess west, looking northeast. 1960 we had the building. 1965 it's still there, and then it was 1970 it got demolished. 1974, and as you can see, we kind of went along and just told the story of the Teatro through our research. Here, these are the only other photos we have that are historic. They're the 1977 Habs photos. And then here is our timeline of sandboard maps, sort of telling the story of how the street facade was, where there were buildings, where there wasn't buildings, and how that slowly changed over time.
Drew, I'm going to interrupt you and point out, can you go back one? Point out that the Sanborn map is in error. If you look
Oh,
up
yeah.
on the north end of it, it says Teatro Carmen. You look at the south end and it says Teatro Royale. That's just a field mistake. Our site has always been Teatro Carmen, and Teatro Royale, the smaller one to the north, was demolished during urban renewal.
Yeah.
Drove us crazy for a while. Then we finally figured out that, you know, just like all of us, people make mistakes, and a mistake was made in 1919.
All right. And then here we have sort of a series of imagery to show, you know, here was the original stage house, the loft. In 1940, here's our market that was at the corner. And again, the market is still existing in the 1965, and it is bound with the Elks Lodge in between. And then here are some of our facade photos, the original photos. These are the only 4 that we have been able to conjure up. But you can see this is the Teatro Carmen. We're guessing this is 1916 based on, you know, the war poster here. And it's our guesstimate. These are our 1970 photos, both of the Elks Lodge, and then the Teatro here, which was the Elks. And you can see the sign, the blade side that hung above the front door. And it's important to note that somewhere between the 1918 photo and the 70 photo, the arches were closed in and the main arch was shrunk down to a smaller size. And you can see that in the 1986 photo that we got from the Daily Star here. And then here's an example.
And also enclosed.
Yeah.
There was
and then here, this is showing, oh, go ahead, Corky.
There was a recessed porch in 1915. You can see those dark openings. So you entered from the street into a kind of a front porch, and those are enclosed, as you can see, probably after the Elks Club bought the building.
And then here's highlighting the shared walls between the buildings that no longer exist on both sides of the Teatro. And just to note that this southern wall here is, from what we can see right now, is all adobe, but I have a reason to suspect that some of the upper level at the top here might have red brick. The other adobe wall that was on the north side has failed, and at some point, the previous owner replaced it with CMU, which you can see from the street. And then here's some handbills, just a part of what our research showing, you know, how we've dove into this project and really been scratching around trying to find information about the space and how the space was used in the past. And through that, Herb Stratford and I have been able to really find the missing photos of the Elks. And this wasn't associated with the Elks that we know now. This is the IBOP Elks of the World, sort of maybe an offshoot of Shriners. We have names, we have some photos of the people in the group, and it was both men and women. These photos don't show that, but some of our other photos we've recovered do. Here's a photo of the Elks in front of their building, and I'm not sure when this time, we're guessing 1960s is when this photo was taken.
And just to clarify what Drew is saying, it was a Black Elks Club because it was segregated, right? So
yeah.
Black folks weren't allowed in the regular Elks Club, and so they formed their Elks Club in 1931, and it closed in the mid 80s. I actually had lunch there in the late 70s one time.
And then some features that we have, and you'll see it in the coming drawings, but here, the original windows, which were 3-pane windows that are now glass block that have been covered up with wood boards for the past, I don't know how many years. You can see we had some gooseneck lights that lit up over the archways on the Teatro, which were also seen in the historic Teatro photo we have. Again, just some more photos of the groups that we found. The interior actually in this photo hasn't changed much. The floor doesn't look as nice, but we still have one of those lights hanging. This second floor in the back is not actually the original second floor, but that sort of framing still exists within the building. And I'll hand this over to Corky now.
So we were charged by both Pima County and Herb Stratford to prepare basically a redevelopment of the site. The theater is going to go back to being a community theater. It was a Spanish language theater with music and drama and films and sporting events. The stage house is gone, but we intend to rebuild the stage house exactly in the same footprint and in the same noted height shown in the Sanborn map. We're also going to recess the porch the way it was, do a ticket booth and a lobby. And then using the southwest corner, which was never built upon in any maps that we could ever find. And so that would be the service area to the stage house and deliveries, and also staff parking. And then the lower Elks Club addition is intended to be a restaurant, which is what it was when the Elks built it as well. You can see that that shared adobe wall, it's just L-shaped, coming along that staircase and turning. So essentially it's a borrowed wall from the fruit stand next to it, which survived the fruit stand and became the wall for the Teatro, and that's still in place. And then finally, we're intending to reactivate that corner, which has, for as long as I can remember, been kind of a derelict metal fence yard with no activity and not much else going on. It is the vision of the county and Herb Stratford Artworks to make that a community patio associated with the restaurant, but also preceding the building of the restaurant, so that it's a place for community activities, for films, for events, etc. On the right, you can see the second floor. That staircase will go to a new projection room, 2 open areas over the north and south part of the lobby, and then an office and an administrative office over the porch itself, and with a little ticket booth that sits inside of that. Anyway, this is the overall notion. The projects that we're looking at today are the restoration of the east facade of the Teatro Carmen and the Elks Club, and then also the building of that patio and the building of the walls around that patio. Next, please. Just to give you an idea of the full scope of the project, the gray areas that are circled are the construction projects in our immediate scope. And so we did roof repairs pre-monsoon, just barely got in under the wire, but we redid and recoated and patched the roof of the lower level Elks Club just to make sure that it was tight during the rainy season. The next project we're going to be doing is the facade work, and that shows essentially going to Pima County Historic Jock contractors and doing that work in September. And then starting toward the end of the year, doing the patio construction. We're at 90% drawings on both the facade and the patio construction. Patio will be bid, not to on-call jocks. It's a larger project. And we will, after these projects are done, then we will tackle the main theater and the loft and all those, and bring those back to you at some point in the future. Next, please. So we're going to go through the patio project. You have drawings that are pretty close to exactly where we are, but I thought it'd be more useful to walk you through those in a more direct way. Next, please. So this is the cover sheet of our 75% CD set. And this shows the development of the patio. There is some slope from north to south. And so at the north end, we're matching the finished floor level of that restaurant. And that's kind of the city mouse portion of the project. There's a ramp that runs down the middle, picks up a slightly lower patio, and then kind of a gravel area to the south that also is an event center, but with a kind of a different character to it. So that we're taking that large open yard space and dividing it into a series of more human scale patios that you can see. You can see where the doors are likely to be into the restaurant. We're going to do the restaurant in this, when we do it, we're going to do it as a gray shell, knowing that an operator of the restaurant will want a lot to say about how that's organized, but we're envisioning double French doors coming out to the south of that project. We've got an entry to the patio at the very north end, immediately adjacent to the Black Elks Club. That's recessed so that we don't have an out-swinging exit door into the relatively narrow sidewalk. And then we do have out-swinging doors because we have more room on the south, but we also are putting the doors at the face of that wall, and you'll see the detail of that, just so we don't create a place for folks to hang out in. We will do the, go back one, we'll do the parking lot and the service area as part of the final phase of the project when we actually do the building. Thanks, Drew. Next. This is an earlier rendering. We're showing it, hoping you'll ignore the perimeter of that because that has changed. But what has not changed is the character of those outdoor patio spaces as it comes out from the Black Elks Club. Next, please. Here's where we currently are. We had several discussions with the folks doing the National Register, National Landmark nomination for Barrio Viejo, and they felt strongly, and we agreed with them, that it's really important to hold that corner. And so we wound up building a patio wall that mimicked the historic market that was there and that is now gone, including the step down to the west along the south elevation. Here you can see it all in context, the restored Teatro Carmen elevation, the restored Elks Club elevation, and I will detail that further on. And then the patio wall along the east and then along the south. Again, we'll show you greater detail about that in a bit. Next. So now we're looking at the east elevation along Meyer. The lower drawing is the full elevation, including the Teatro Carmen. And the Elks Club, the one above, is an enlargement of that, giving you a little more detail. We're going to match that 14-foot height of the original building on the corner, which also happens to match the height of the new construction across the south in the Miramonte Homes section. Starting from from north to south, we've got a gate that needs to be secure and panicked hardware, and we'll show you a detail of that. Then we have some vertical steel that allows viewers to look into that upper level of the part of the patio. And then moving south, we have openings in that wall that have shutters, that bifold shutters that come on the inside, and then a cage of secure steel that keeps that protected, very similar to what the Rawlings family did on the patio on South Convent, almost exactly 1 block east of where we are, facing in the same direction. Next slide, Drew, and we'll come back to all of these. This is now the south elevation. Again, the larger top drawing shows it in context. and then a more detailed drawing showing what that looks like. Showing the step down and a little inset photo that shows what we're matching. Again, 3 more of those shuttered windows. We're going to do a veneer of stone along the base of the wall, a little bit on the Meyer side, and a lot on the Simpson side. That really is reflective of the Rawlings buildings across Meyer. And then the fence that opens into that gate. And again, you'll see details of that. Doesn't that come down lower or not?
It does. It does.
Okay. And then eventually there'll be trash enclosure, et cetera, that will be screened. Next, keep going. These are some sections. This is a section, east-west section looking back to the north at the Black Elks and then the Teatro Carmen looming above that. And that shows some of the patio walls internal to those patios. The next one is a east-west section looking south. So those shows the 3 openings that are shuttered. It shows the step down matching the original market that was the corner, and then the gates, and then some little garden walls on the west end of that. Next, please. And then 2 more sections. This is looking east with a north-south section looking back essentially toward Meyer. You can see we do have some significant slope coming along. You can see the fence that comes down there and then the openings in that wall. And then that's the ramp that runs down the middle of the site. And then this is the last section, and it's looking west, and you're looking at the wall that's going to divide the parking area from the patio area, so we won't see much of any of the service area or the parking lot. Next. Just some more details on the gates. At the upper, on the left, you'll see those shutters that open in, and then the steel cage that sits outside. We're meeting county safety standards for all of the gates because of the panic hardware required. So we need the ability to have a panic hardware there and the ability to get to not allow someone to reach through those to hit the panic bar and open the gate. Those will all be painted black, pretty nondescript, and they will be of different sizes and shapes depending on where they are, whether they're going to the parking lot or to South Meyer or to Simpson. Next, please. And then finally, we're showing you a little bit of lighting. Again, we had some pretty good precedent photographs. This is the proposed lighting, mostly through kind of angled pendants that are dark sky compliant, and then some recessed wall washers that come down the ramp and are in some of those patio walls. The ones on the, help me out here, Drew, the one on the top is exterior and the one on the bottom is interior.
Yeah. The top one here, this lamp is what's going to be used on the facade with this gooseneck, because the lower gooseneck here best matches what the original was, and then this gooseneck will be used on the interior, and this bell lighting, because of the size of the lot and what we're looking for, we barely have half an acre, and we're only allowed 80,000 lumens with the dark sky. So we're being very particular on our choices of lighting, where the lighting's going, and where we're going to have to take advantage. So this angled one actually lets out more light than we want it to, but because it's going to be on the facade and be a part of the Hollywood display, we're choosing that one.
And I apologize for getting the stems backwards. took my best guess.
Don't worry.
Next, please. Next slide.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Corgi.
Yeah. Would you want to pause for a bit and talk about the patio first, or would you want us to go all the way through?
I think it'd be good to pause. There's a lot of info coming out.
Yeah. What image would you like us to pause on?
Maybe the site plan, the initial site plan.
Okay.
So the northern patio, Corky, is that a concrete there?
Yes, it'd be a kind of a exposed aggregate,
Okay,
and those are tree wells that you're looking at.
right, with the grade
And
over
all
them.
those other walls are lower.
Which the planter walls,
The planter walls interior.
right? And are you doing that rock planter wall in the middle that kind of popped up in some of the images?
Yes, we have, thank you. We have a basement that we discovered in our archaeology. We discovered a basement under some or all of the market that was on the corner. And we're gonna have to excavate that anyway, just to get the, the engineered fill that we need to support that rather large footing that's gonna be under that cantilevered footing underneath the tall wall in red. And we're gonna reuse that stone and create a stone planter from that existing rock in the center of the site. Thanks, good question.
And that red wall, Corky, on the detail of the windows, that looks like it's a 12-inch wall, and then there's another block on the inside of that. Can you just tell us exactly what that's going to be?
So because we're taking the wall so high, the engineers asked us that we have to use a thicker block. So and we have to use a full block. And we wanted to have a 4-inch veneer at the bottom, the rock veneer at the bottom of the wall. So it's going to be a 16-inch wall. So I'll have a 12 by 8 by 16 as a structural unit, and then it will have 4.5 inches of rock veneer at the base, and then it will come up with a 4-inch veneer CMU just to come flush.
Okay, so you're not going to just stick the block veneer on top of the other. You're going to have another 4-inch wall on top of that.
Yeah, it's going to be embedded. And then what you're seeing is the
That's
red.
great.
It's going to have the brick.
Yeah, and that, what's kind of interesting is that a lot of folks look at the stone bases on adobe buildings and think that's a full stone foundation, but in almost all cases, it's a veneer.
Right.
We're doing the Simpson one just down the street, and that's a veneer. It's, it's about 6 inches of stone, and it's adobe behind it.
I have a question about presentation of project. Okay, if this patio is to be an expansion of the use of the Black Elks Club, why aren't we seeing both the Black Elks Club and the patio as a project?
Because they're going to be built at different time. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Phasing.
What?
Mary Lou, are you asking about why you're not seeing it as a formal review?
No, I'm even in a courtesy review, if you know that this patio is going to be part of a bar and restaurant in the Black Elks, why isn't it being presented as one project? It might be funded at different times, but why isn't it being shown as one project?
Well, our first slide showed showed everything together. Can we go back to that? Maybe I'm misunderstanding you, Mary Lou.
Let me just jump in real quick on that one. I think part of the reason that we're approaching it this way is that restaurant space, which is the blue space there on the drawing, that space is going to be operated by a third party. So we have not, basically, we're going to gray shell that out and, you know, while we're looking for who that operator may be. So it sort of, we decided that it didn't make sense to map out a total restaurant space that we're not going to operate, because someone may come in and say, oh, well, we actually need a little bit more square footage for this, you know, for the kitchen versus the interior seating area or things like that. So that's why we decided that we weren't going to really go into a lot of detail about that restaurant space, because that will, as Corky mentioned, that space will be developed and built out at the same time as the theater space, which is really a phase 2 once we raise the rest of the money.
And then just one further response, if I'm understanding your question. As I said earlier, we took this to the Historic Commission in March. They had only positive things to say about it. And they said, would you please bring projects back to you as you are getting building permits to move forward? And that's what we're doing today.
Mhm. We're obviously going to draw what's the seating space for how many people?
Probably 60, although there might be an outdoor movie theater that would hold with movable chairs more than that.
Okay.
So that's going to be a community space with negotiation with the restaurant as to how much the restaurant gets and how it's operated. I think Herb can speak to that a little bit more in terms of his vision and the county's vision for that.
Well, and I think part of the reason too, that we're not only because we were able to identify and secure the funding for the outside space, but also that enables us to start utilizing that space as a cultural, you know, kind of art space while we're raising the funds for the interior space. So the plan would be, from a programmatic standpoint, to start doing things out there as they're possible, which would be maybe, you know, sort of a micro cinema and some music and things like that. Obviously, they would have to be short events because we won't have access to restrooms. But I can tell you that all of our neighbors, the Coronet and EXO and everybody, is excited about that opportunity to have events taking place right across the street from their businesses.
And there could well be a year and a half between the time the patio is finished and the time the theater is finished. Year and a half, even 2 years. So we're trying to get the site up and activated.
There's that thorny issue of parking.
And I
How's
think
that going to be dealt with?
Well, and I think ideally, what we're going to be doing in terms of our plans is to directing people to the TCC lots. The capacity for a fully seated auditorium style presentation is somewhere between 260 and 280 people. So it's not a horrible situation with parking. I know that's easy for me to say, but I also developed the Fox
You don't
Theater
live here.
with 1,200 seats, so I know what you deal with too. I understand.
Yeah, actually, the Tucson Convention Center doesn't have enough parking to satisfy its capacity. So there could be potential problems if there are events going on at the TCC and here at the same time.
So Corky, I'm a bit concerned about the restrooms being right on the street there. The kind of lighting you normally have in restrooms and the feel that gives is what kind of a window is there? I didn't pay for.
You know, thank you, Philip. It's an interesting question. I was just in the Boston airport and was using the restrooms in the Boston airport, and their restrooms are out on the exterior of the building with natural light coming in, and what a wonderful thing that was. And so our intent was to have those original windows back in place and then have a film glass on the inside. So those rooms would have natural light, but certainly privacy.
So we would see a translucent window there.
That's correct.
And then what kind of lighting are you thinking in there? What temperature? And
Don't have that figured out yet.
Because I think that makes a huge difference, right? That you can have the classical bathroom lighting and then it'll feel like a bathroom on the outside, or you can make it appear more like a more residential feel or something.
Well, that's what we're going to do then. That's
Yeah.
a good idea. I mean, our
And there was
challenge
no
is
other
that
way of solving that. I mean, if you had put
No.
the storage further back and, you know, where you have the
Philip,
loading dock, it
the
seems-
issue is it has to serve the lobby of the theater as well as the restaurant,
right?
and that's a
Philip,
challenge.
there was some conversation about that bathroom window potentially acting as a display case for the theater,
Hmm.
where it may not even allow light to pass through it, and that we use it as an opportunity to present handbills and different.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just a conversation we've had in the past, but none of that has been developed at this point.
I like your comment about the color of the light, Philip.
Yeah. I mean, that's the last fix, right? If there's no other
Yeah.
plan change that could be done to make this, I mean, it's a bit of a shame. Yeah. I understand the quality of the light in the restroom, but you know, it's not your project to do that because the men's restroom doesn't have it, right? So you could put skylights into, I mean, yeah. But understood.
Yeah, anyway, thank you.
Yeah. The other comment is that stepping down of the wall on the south, and in general, that wall, are you seeing that wall? Is that like mimicking the old wall in any way that used to
Yes.
be here?
Yes, that's
in
entire,
which
and
way?
that's why we're showing that.
So the stepping is historic. Yeah.
Yes. You know, we felt like, we were getting a lot of pressure from, to be honest, from the landmark folks saying, you can't have a little low wall in the corner. There used to be a building there.
Mm,
Corners in the barrio are really important. It's really important to hold
Right.
those corners. And I tend to agree with that.
yeah.
And so now we're doing kind of a tall wall on the corner, and we're starting to get a little bit dangerously toward interpreting history that we
Yes,
felt
that's a bit my worry here. Yeah.
we didn't know very well. And then we
Yeah.
discovered that photograph, and that really kind of settled us down because we've got very clear evidence of the height of that building and the step down of that wall, which we've matched exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel more comfortable.
Yeah, there's things, I mean, these openings are not the historic ones, obviously, per the
Correct.
photo. And that one, and they all get really close to parapet, and they wouldn't have been that way because you couldn't have fit the rafters in between the top of the window and the parapet, right? So I think this is where it breaks apart a bit. It's like in one way you are being historically accurate, and the other you're taking freedoms that clearly show this is a concrete wall and something from a different time. It's a tough one, I think. It's not a very pure proposition.
No, I agree, but I mean that's what Rick did on South Convent. I mean,
that's the old wall, Corky.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I frankly agree with you on that third window.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit close to the parapet. I think it might be more comfortable just to take that one out of there.
Yeah. Or they're different, right? I mean, so often that happened too in the barrio. The on the other elevation, on the east elevation, here it seems you're almost, you're having one wall that has this 80s feel, right? Or 70s, the Rollings editions walls, and then one that is historicizing, almost as if you're creating a more historic elevation. What's your take on that? Why did you choose one to be a very different time than the other? And was there a historic building ever on that lot?
Yeah, they were smaller though. So there was a series of buildings, which is essentially what we're trying to recreate. The fact that it wasn't a uniform elevation, but there were different buildings of different heights. Drew, can you go back to or go forward, I guess, to the where that we can see the fruit stand in the facade of the.
Should we start the other presentation and then it'll walk through?
Well, I want to make sure there are not other comments from others.
Yeah, and then the stone, I agree that obviously it's often a protection of the adobe wall behind. Here it wouldn't be really needed, right? It could be just because you don't have a adobe wall behind.
Correct.
So it's more of a historicizing element in that way. But understood. The historic didn't have it, I think, right? Or we're not
We
seeing
have no
that?
way, we have no way of knowing.
Because there's
that.
that image from the 60s or so that didn't show it, right?
No, we don't know. What we do know is that there was a stone stem wall
Right.
and a full stone basement below that.
Okay. Well,
I
yeah,
don't know how far up that came. We don't.
yeah.
When they
that's a
demoed
good-
the building, they went down to right down to grade with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there
But
other
I think
comments?
it's really nice that you bring back that porch on the Teatro. That's a great way of dealing with that facade.
Should we move on to that, or are there other comments on the patio? Okay, can you go back a couple, Drew? Yeah, okay. So now we're going to talk about the facade project. And that will be a separate project, and that will be out pretty soon. Next slide. So again, at the top, you can see the original building. And the original building was brick, shamelessly brick. And so it is our intent to restore that brick elevation. We've looked very closely at it and the ability to restore that brick. All the corbels are in place. Almost everything that you can see is underneath the really nasty stucco. That's 2 layers of stucco. The first one's a good one. The one that's on the top is more like a cake icing stucco. While we have this one, you can see there are the remnants of a mural on the top of the Black Elks Club. And
Vincent, can you be quiet? Thank you.
I'll come back to that in a minute. And you can see the painting and the flowers and the Teatro Carmen sign, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then below is how we intend to restore that elevation to the way it was. For the Teatro Carmen, we've got that one photograph, which we've relied on heavily. For the Black Elks Club, we have the original Blanton and Cole drawing, so we're able to restore that elevation to precisely the way it was when it was built. On the right side, you can see Whoopi Goldberg and Mary Louise Parker in a scene from Boys on the Side, which is when that mural was painted for that film, as were the flowers and the Teatro Carmen. And then on the lower, you can see starting to take a peek at that brick beneath. On the left half of that drawing is the adobe wall on the south side, and then the stucco. Let's just keep going and we'll come to all this in detail. So this is our intent for the restoration. Again, the Black Elks Club is directly from the drawings. It's got those beautiful deco doors that are recessed in there. We can't find any evidence of that Elks kind of chubby letters that sit above that, but those are in the drawings. And then we're going to have a fair amount of work to do to restore the soldier course of the arched openings and the height and size of those openings, and then the base of that as well. But we're feeling very confident that once we start to see what's underneath there, we'll have a lot better shot at trying to essentially restore those functional arches. Next. So here's the original Blanton and Cole drawing. You can see that Scott O'Mac brilliantly found, and that just told us a huge amount about the structure, about the foundation, and in particular, this facade. Scott O'Mac is an archaeologist and a preservation staff member at Pima County, and thank you, Scott, if you're still on. So this just helped us immensely, and you'll see that we are intending to paint out that mural, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Next. This is the way it was in that 60s photo on the left, in the 70s photo on the right. And I got the boys on the side film, and I stopped and screenshot 2 stills from that movie made in 1995. We know from several sources that the mural was painted as part of making that facade look cool for the making of that movie, as was all the paintings on that. We have a little bit of trepidation about the removal of the mural, but it's in terrible, terrible shape. It was painted as a faux mural for a movie set, but we still intend to take that through the deaccession process through the Arts Foundation, although it's not listed as any public art development. Next. So that's what we're going to be doing on that. And then the Teatro Carmen facade, again, we're relying heavily on this photograph. You can see the adobe wall in white on either side. As Drew said, the one on the north side was exposed when the north building came down and basically fell down and was replaced with a CMU wall. So the Teatro Carmen on the inside is part brick, part adobe, and part CMU at the current time. Most of the western portion is brick, as is the front facade. Next. So here's what we intend to restore based on pretty good evidence that we have. And then next, Drew, we're going to be putting back the wrought iron gates that were there. If you look to the next slide, you'll be able to see why we think that's true. This is an enlargement of the photograph. They had covered the arch to the right with signs and advertisements, but you can see that there was a vertically oriented wrought iron gate. We don't know that it stopped at the spring line of the arch, but it seems pretty likely that it did. Seems better than trying to be aggressive and continue it all the way to the top and touch the arch. And we also need it for security. We don't want, you know what, we want to be able to enclose that porch when the theater is not in use. When it is in use, those will roll back and be wide open. So we don't have to worry about panic hardware or direction of travel. There'll be a big sign saying gates must be open when the building is in use. Next. It shows a little bit about how those gates would operate and how that open porch will operate and how the ticket booth will be. It's tricky to know when to stop the facade work, but what we're intending to do is build the structure that's in dark, frame structure in dark. And next slide shows that how we're going to top that off. So that looking south will also in pink will be the extent of our work in this facade phase. Otherwise, we're going to wind up with plywood over the openings while we're trying to do the rest of the building. Here it shows both in plan and in section. I think we're near the end. Next, Drew. And this just shows a little bit of kind of excavation we've done. You can see the 2 layers of plaster. The top layer you can take off with your fingers. It's poorly adhered and quite a wedding cake finish on it. The lower is a much better plaster and is adhering to the brick quite well. Our instructions to the brick restoration folks is that we will very gently get as much of that plaster off as we can, only with hand scrapers, being very careful not to break the crust of the brick. You can see a little bit further down, the water damage has already, and that's really just the first couple of feet. That's already taken the crust off, but we feel pretty confident that we can get a pretty decent looking brick. It won't be perfect, but it will look a lot better than a lot of the stucco taken off brick that we see around town, not mentioning any names. And that will be the instruction to the contractor, and that will be a jock bid coming to Pima County, and those will be only historic contractors on that list, and we expect that work to start really in the next 3 weeks or so. I think that's the last slide, and we're happy to answer any questions. Next, Drew. Next. Yeah. We're happy to answer. Herb Stratford is here. Sarah Fontaine from Pima County. Scott O'Mac, I think, is still on the line from Pima County, and we're happy to, okay, we're happy to answer any questions you might have. And we can go back to any images if you want for our discussion.
Anybody want to start? Well, I just have to say, I think it's very promising that you guys are doing this work, and I appreciate it. I think I don't have any questions on the facade work.
Well, I just mentioned that I'm impressed that you're going to be trying to clean off the plaster without going into using any harsh methods like sandblasting that really destroys the surface of the brick. So it looks like it's going to be a big project, but I think you're approaching it
Thank you.
in the best possible manner.
Thank you. Our instructions to the contractor is no machine tools at all. No grinders, nothing mechanized to take that off. Drew, can you go back one? One thing I forgot to say is that we're also going to repoint those bricks in that reddish mortar that you can see in the photograph. So there was a reddish mortar and not a gray mortar on the brick. And so we have that color, we can see it. And so the brick will certainly on the lower part will take a fair amount of repointing. And I think there's going to have to be some touch-up work. We did Old Main and did a lot of that kind of repointing at the lower stone level of that. And so we're going to pay very close attention. But that, as you point out, excuse me, sandblasting tends to ruin the mortar, which tends to be softer than the brick. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, I think also that the restoration work looks really great. I'm looking forward to seeing that. My question is about the ticket booth. That's going to be obviously a feature that's going to be visible. And like my wish would be, it was really just something really refined, right? And almost maybe showing the time from where, you know, our time versus trying to match anything that's there, right? It's a new edition, and it
Yeah,
could
we
be
have
something
no,
super. I mean, I'm thinking here Italian restoration, right? Very good on restoring the existing, but then also really refined and adding something contemporary and new, and that would be really beautiful here.
thank you. That's we don't know anything about that.
Mhm.
I'm almost certain there was not a ticket booth, but we would not try to conjure up some 1915 ticket booth. We would do something relatively modest, paint it black, make it disappear as an architectural feature to the extent that we could. Good
Cool.
comment. Thank you.
What's the timeline between the facade work and the building out that ticket booth?
Well, we're going to frame the ticket booth when we're doing the facade, and we're going to build the ticket booth when we do the building. So there might be a year and a half between the two, and it might be covered with plywood during that year and a half.
All right, if nobody has any other questions, I think we can wrap this up. Corky and everybody else, thank you for your time on this.
Thank you. It was
Thank you.
a pleasure to get that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, Jody, are you there?
I'm always here.
Okay. Just check sleeping. Just kidding. So number 5, the Tucson Pima County Historical County Separation Update.
So the last time we had a meeting, we didn't have this item, but I gave you an update anyways, which is basically that we're still on pause and you guys had time to write a letter. You'll recall that there were a number of the other neighborhood associations and stuff that have written letters. We're still on a pause. So if I think you wanted to use this time to discuss potentially writing a letter. I can't write the letter for you. So this is going to be up to you guys to write it. If somebody wants to volunteer for that.
Well, I think before we talk about who's writing, I mean, I think is there a consistent opinion that this board wants to share, right? You know, from what I thought was good parts about the letters we received was just a request to the city to make sure that whatever is happening, the neighborhood voices are being taken serious, and we'll have a formal representation in whatever processes they're going to be. Either they're going to just stay as they are, the boards, or they're going to be in some form represented that's meaningful, right? Not just a consulting voice or you know, a vote that is that can easily be overruled. You know, it should be some form of a decisive voice still. That's for me the bottom line content of a letter of that sort. I want to say also, from my opinion, I support efforts to make the process a bit more focused, I would say. You know, we have done this a few times, and I've been on the side of the applicant, and I'm gonna be frank here, and I've been elsewhere too, but like the board was always the hardest, and it was really good, and I thought it always made the project better. We rarely met any feedback then afterwards on the commission. I mean, I remember once we had, I think, to come back for a minor thing, but it was always smooth sailing. I didn't consider that really a hurdle, and I would wonder actually in a way, I mean, it really missed that for certain passion that these boards can bring in, and I'm not saying passion in a bad way here. I mean, you know, I think sincere interest, that's what authentic interest and opinions and positioning. So, you know, that would be the bottom line for me for a letter like that. But we could obviously go further if there was consent on saying it's to mayor and council, please keep the boards just as they are, or whatever, right? That's open to us. But from my end, I support processes to make it I don't think it needs the 2 reviews as long as the neighborhood has this decisive say it has in the moment. And whatever it takes to organize it in that way. And if that's the current way, well, then that's what it is. But I like that about Tucson, how strong the neighborhoods are. But we have seen in the history of this board that that doesn't always work either, right? So you couldn't just have the board, it seems, or you need, you need that double function is probably serving something. But I think the neighborhood should stay there in some form as a really strong opinion.
You do have the other letters, so I mean, you guys have I sent those to you, so you kind of have an idea of what they wrote. And definitely you don't have to follow those, but at least you have an idea of what everybody else's concerns are too.
Yeah, from I thought they were very strong in some ways of just sometimes keeping the way it is, right? And from my end, I support changes to the better. And I think there's definitely ways probably to make it better. I don't know them, or I've seen propositions, but those weren't convincing yet. Just to remove the barrier board and just having a consulting voice in the commission, I don't think that's enough. But to just say, keep it as is, I'm not sure. It would be a hard one for me to support as well, that far-going opinion.
Do you want to draft a letter?
Yeah. If you want it next year, yeah. But yes, no, but I would like to hear, I mean, Mary Lou, I know you have been obviously, you have a deep insight into those discussions, and it would be, I mean, what do you think about drafting a letter as a group, and about the content of that, and everybody here, obviously.
I think we need to draft a letter. And it needs to be representative of the board. Paul, what do you think?
Well, I'd be interested in participating in editing a letter. I'm not sure where to, where I'd start with it, but.
I agree. We all should edit. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, actually, Jody, how does that work with the open meetings law, writing a letter like this?
I would suggest probably that one of you writes it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean,
we could have a discussion in this forum.
Yes.
Probably, right? Yeah, that's open. That's following then the. Yeah.
We actually just, I mean, we do have another meeting on the 15th to discuss design guidelines. So I already put together the agenda, but I can alter it to include this item again.
Actually, I have a question if we could move that by 1 week, because I can't join next week, unfortunately.
So let's come back to that. But I mean, I could alter that agenda so that if like one of you, since you now just gave yourself like an extra week, you have 2 weeks to write the letter, and then we could have a discussion about it in the upcoming meeting. Does that make sense? So then you're still all kosher with the open meeting laws. Unless you don't want me there, because it's all very awkward.
Really?
It's only slightly awkward that I'm there.
But nothing of this is personal, Jody. I mean, right?
It's not, I don't take.
I mean,
it-
the first sentence probably will be that the city needs more staff and support the people you have, you know, like.
Yeah, it's like, why don't you beef up the staff?
Exactly. So I thought we were supporting you, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's as long as you're not, throwing rocks at me, I'm good.
No, we'd like to throw rocks at the people doing the hiring, because they obviously don't get it.
Yeah, we want you to be in a good position, you know, and it's about all three parties involved, the commission, us, and the city being, in the best position they can be to foster these processes, you know.
You're really you should totally write the letter. You got all the words, not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah. Grace has the same words, but Grace, you're doing the work on the editing on the document, right? So I think we should spare you. Yeah. Grace, what do you have an initial thought on this, or what's your take?
Yeah, no, I think your point about the passion is well made. I don't I'm newer to the board, so I defer to you guys in general in terms of the process and what sort of impact,
But in a way, you're newer, but you had experience of two boards. So that's really a valuable thing that you're bringing in, you know.
I think this board is a lot more focused, not to say anything negative about Armory Park, but there's a lot, I think, more constructive design conversations in this board than in my experience in the Armory Park board. A lot of different concerns over there. So I would say maybe there's a way that we can modify the boards or limit, I don't know, reduce the size or something to achieve that across the board.
In a way, it should be the city or these consultants that the city hired job to propose solutions that we then concretely can comment on, right? I mean, it seems they are not on the table yet. We all heard about them in these meetings, but that isn't yet formal, right, Jody? I mean, or there's nothing that the mayor and council can yet vote on.
No, so ultimately what will happen, so as I mentioned, we're going to September, October, a study session with the new information that we received from SHPO and the NPS. And then if they say, yes, go forward, then, we could have another stakeholder meeting, or we could go to the Historic Commission, the Planning Commission, and Mayor and Council. When we go back to Mayor and Council that last time, that's when we would have recommendations and they would vote at that point. We would, in theory, also have them for the Planning Commission and the Historic Commission too. Yeah. As we're working, because it's no longer just the stakeholder group, it's a group, a larger group as a whole.
Yeah. Okay.
You could also, I mean, here's a suggestion. I'll just kind of take a stab. Maybe if the letter is a little bit too daunting because everybody's busy, you can all kind of take a stab at like a paragraph or something like that. And then when we reconvene, you can put them all together to see how they work. And then you just have to work on flow. I'm just trying to think of more manageable bites for everybody.
Yeah,
Sure. I can take a stab at something and somebody can else, and
I will too.
It will start off being like an elephant.
Yeah, I will too. I mean, I will give a stab at this thing too. I mean, especially if there's 2 weeks, and I think it's an important thing. And the Barrio, I find we have to have a voice in this. I mean, like, it cannot be that all the others are right. I mean, not even that, but even if none of them were writing, we should, respond to this. I think mayor and council need to hear from us. I mean, we're, I think, are very active. I mean, we're a board that does its job with a lot of responsibility, I think, and that's part of it. Yeah.
Well, I think we should point out that the advisory boards in the historic neighborhoods have been going on for over 40 years now. So it's a pretty well established
Process.
Did-
That doesn't
did
mean
you-
that doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't always run smoothly, but Grace was kind enough to say that we are focused.
So did you want to make a motion to write the letter and review or write portions of the letter and review at the next meeting, or how do you want to do that?
Everybody at their best capability should find, as far as they can contribute with some thoughts, and then we'll talk about it next time. That would be the
Okay.
outline of my motion, or that.
Was there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And everybody's on board with that?
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Okay. Everyone should, the may sound a little funky as a motion. Everyone should contribute.
Can contribute or might contribute at their best capabilities, so that we can discuss and formulate a conclusive response in the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, I think I got it.
How much we should
Alrighty.
probably give this at least half an hour of discussion in the next meeting, in your agenda, Jody,
Okay.
depending on how much we have, but half an hour sounds good to me.
I generally give everybody 30 minutes. Haven't you noticed my time estimate is
Yeah.
always 30?
Good.
And then you wanted to change the date.
Yeah,
staff,
if
I was just
that's,
gonna
sorry,
say.
but I have to go on a site visit in San Diego, Jody, but and if it would 1 week later work for everybody?
That's
The
okay
20
with me.
I won't be able to make the 22nd.
Yes, you are out. I see now. Yeah,
But the 29.
I can't do that day.
So you don't have to do it on a Monday.
24th.
No,
Grace?
no.
Sorry, is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm available.
Okay, the 24th of August.
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine.
Paul,
Okay, that works for me.
Grace.
Yeah, that worked for me.
Okay, let's do the 24th of August at 4.
Okay, rather than the 15th.
Correct.
Okay,
August 24th. At 4. Okay, I'll send out a invite,
Cool.
and I'll cancel the other one for the 15th. And I don't have any other staff updates.
Okay, so let's make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Let's see you on the 24th.
Cool.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.